Hello, everyone. I'm Mia Voss. Thank you for joining us today. I am going to be talking with Robyn O'Brien. So impressed with her. She's an author, speaker, a Colorado mom, and she is getting everybody the information they need to know to feed their families well and figure out what exactly is going in the food that's going on their family's table, which is a huge issue here in Colorado, Oregon, and around the country. And I met Robyn last week at ShiftCon, which was an eco-wellness conference out in Los Angeles, and so excited to talk with her today and to find out that she lives in Colorado along with me and is making a huge movement here in Colorado to get people in the know. So welcome, Robyn. Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much, Mia.
Yay. This is going to be exciting today. Listen, this is a serious issue, but we're going to make it fun and entertaining, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, food is just at the core of everything we do, and I think as a generation of women, we grew up hearing a ton of different messages, and it's really hard to sort it all out and know what we should pay attention to and what we shouldn't. And, you know, I'm the first to admit it. I mean, I grew up drinking Diet Cokes and eating who knows what, you know. I didn't really pay attention. So it's absolutely to be here for each other as we really find ourselves on this changing landscape.
A great way to put it, and it really is about the education of it, because if you don't take the time, it's really hard to figure out what is good for you anymore because of labeling and the way things are put out there in marketing, right?
Well, you know, and I think too, I mean, I would have happily gone along not paying much attention. You know, that's the way I had always operated until our fourth child got sick. And all of a sudden I was forced to read these labels because she had an egg allergy. And I'm trying to like decipher this stuff. And I'm thinking, I can't even pronounce these things and how much of it is safe. And the more that I dug into what was going into the food, just flat out to try to protect her, you know, with her food allergy, the more I started to learn and the more I realized how little we know. And I think probably the most important thing was, you know, I took a big step back and I thought, okay, we know our families are sick. You know, today 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women are expected to get cancer. And we see 1 in 3 kids now has autism, ADHD, allergies, or asthma. I mean, you walk into any preschool in the country and they got an EpiPen wall or an EpiPen drawer or an EpiPen cupboard. And so, you know, we know that that's happening. And it's forcing us to pay attention and read labels. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I didn't want to. Nobody wants to be standing in the grocery store having to read through everything. But now here we are and here we stand. And I think when you step back a little bit and you realize in the United States, we're a lot sicker than a lot of other countries. And are there things that we could be doing to not only protect ourselves, but also try to prevent the onset of some of these conditions and diseases?
Yeah, absolutely. This is twofold. It's one is the message that you were saying about with your child. So you're having to be a label detective, one, to keep your child safe and healthier just based on this allergy. Then you can take it a step back and go, okay, why do so many, like you said, why do so many kids in this generation? And I'm in my 40s. I don't remember ever hearing about anything to do with intolerance for foods. Grew up in the Midwest.
I mean, we had none, and I think, you know, I dismissed food allergies until this fourth child came along. You know, I thought, who's allergic to food? I mean, it seemed impossible to actually comprehend that a kid could be so allergic to fundamental food groups. And yet, as I started to really learn about it, you know, it was amazing that from 1997 until 2002, there was a doubling of the peanut allergy. And it was stunning to me that the CDC reported a 265% increase in the rate of hospitalizations related to food allergic reactions. So for all the drama and all the hype and all the name calling that was going on out there, you know, that's the CDC reporting people checked into ER. And so that's hard data, you know, and I stepped back and I thought, what is going on, and are we allergic to food, or are we allergic to what's been done to it? And what I realized is that no long-term human health studies had been done on some of the ingredients that we have recently introduced into our food. And it's not to say correlation is causation. I was a financial analyst. I covered the food industry. I was on a team that managed billions in assets. Correlation is not causation. However, a correlation of this magnitude, that uptick of the introduction of these ingredients perfectly corresponds to the uptick in the rates of autism and allergies and cancers and everything else we're seeing. Again, correlation is not causation, but it's forcing us to read these labels. And as we do, we're saying, you know, what is this stuff? And why is the United States one of the only developed countries in the world that allowed for it to be put into our food without telling consumers and American families? And that question, to me, struck as a fundamental human right. And it really challenged how I viewed our country. You know, I grew up in a really patriotic family. My dad served in the U.S. Army, and to me, this fundamental information on how to protect our children and how to protect our families and our loved ones seems to be a fundamental human right. And 64 countries around the world have said these new ingredients, which are these genetically engineered ingredients that were introduced by a chemical company, and it's a brilliant business model for a chemical company. You genetically engineer these food crops so that they can be sprayed with your chemicals, and it drives the business model, it drives the revenue. And somebody who is an analyst, I totally get it. It's a brilliant business model.
Right.
But 64 countries around the world said we don't have any long-term human tests on this, and we don't know what the long-term impact will be on animals that eat it, on soil, on a pregnant mom, on a kid with autism. Since we don't know the long-term impact, we're going to label these things so that we can track them. And that's what our trading partners did.
And that's really what this is about. I mean, I talked with Gary Hirschberg, who I know you've been working with as well, on this about it. In some ways, we really almost want to turn this into a nonpartisan thing, or a bipartisan thing, where it's like it's not about even how you vote per se. Yes, we talked about the money model. It is a brilliant model, but you start looking at the numbers, and I mean, everybody. I don't care how you vote. Everybody eats food.
Oh, absolutely. I will be the first to admit that I was raised in a really conservative Republican family in Texas, and this is absolutely not a partisan issue. This is an American issue. Yes. 100% it's an American issue. And right now the United States spends more on healthcare and disease management than any other country on the planet. And we see it. We know it in our families. I knew it in mine. I mean, we were back and forth to the pediatrician's office all the time. The kids were always sick. And as we began to make these slight adjustments, and it's not saying one size fits all, it's not saying there's a magic cure, but to simply eat less fake food, that's a step that anyone, anywhere could be taking. And there's so many simple ways that we can do that. And I think when you really start to learn how other countries are eating, how they're managing their health in a smarter, more preventative way, I think we can follow that lead. And then to me, probably one of the most stunning things that I ever learned was that our own American food companies formulate their products differently for eaters in other countries. So they either label things like genetically engineered ingredients, or they don't use them at all. They just don't use them in the formulation. I know. Another thing they do, I mean, the same with artificial dyes. Artificial dyes are a petroleum-derived artificial color. And yeah, again, the business model, it's brilliant. It's way cheaper to use artificial fake stuff than it is to use something that's natural. And these food companies, they dialed into that pretty quickly. But when moms in the UK said, you know what, we don't want artificial colors and we don't want genetically engineered ingredients in our food, then our American food companies, they either removed or labeled these ingredients in the food that they sell to families overseas. And when I learned that, I was like, why are they not providing those same products on our grocery store shelves? Why the double standard? Why haven't they placed the same value on the lives of our kids? They know how to make their products and be successful in countries around the world by either labeling these things or not using them altogether. They can do the same for American families, and I think especially when you consider the burden that any disease, is placing on our economy, to simply all move together, to eat less fake food, to replace those fake artificial ingredients again with real ones. It's like we're looking back on the last 50 years, and it was this giant experiment of how large can we get these margins and how much can we drive profitability, by swapping out the real stuff and pumping in this fake stuff and genetically engineering our crops to soak them in things like Roundup, which if you walk into Home Depot and you grab a bottle of Roundup, on the very front of that thing, it says, keep out of reach of children. Well, that's what they're pouring on our food. And so let's step back. Let's look back at this 50 years and say, is this really what we want going forward? And how can we create a better food system? How can we build one that meets the needs of 21st century families, meets the needs of a growing population, meets the needs of both the obese and the malnourished? And I think, again, we are in the 21st century. We've got incredible access to technology. Yes. We have brilliant people. We have brilliant insight. They're brilliant parents that are involved in this movement. And I really think, rather than spend a lot of time looking back and focusing on what went wrong, we have this opportunity in front of us to really look forward and decide what we want to build and create together.
I've been calling it ever since I saw you and Gary speak at ShiftCon, the whoops business model. Whoops, that didn't work, right? Of this trying out these chemicals and so forth. And again, a lot of us, we come from these generations of trusting in what is going to be put in, or what the business models that are in place, or the different things that are in place to say, yes, so this is what our farmers are putting on the crops, or this is what's going on our store. And I think what would be amazing to do is to turn they talk about if you're going to eat better, you really have to do the perimeter of the store, which unfortunately isn't even safe anymore because we're talking about crops that have that, or even vegetables. But I would love for it to be a generation, or the new world order of the interior of the store being a safer place for people to be. And real quickly, we've had viewers that are just popping in, Robyn, which is so encouraging. So if you're just turning in, I'm Mia Voss. This is Robyn O'Brien. We are talking about GMOs, labeling. We're going to get to Proposition 105 here in Colorado as well. But you just busted out to a big piece of info on me. I'm still reeling. I'm sorry. I did not know that there were different business models that were put for foods that were made in the U.S. that are sold in Europe. That is outrageous.
Yeah, I think a perfect example is Hershey's, for example, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. We're coming up on Halloween. Mm-hmm. And that carries a lot, that item, because of the number of children that now have peanut allergy. And I recently saw a packaging for a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup that is, sold in Sweden. And not only does it label genetically engineered ingredients, but the packaging also says it's made in the USA. So here's Reese's, Hershey's, they are making Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. They're labeling genetically engineered ingredients. It didn't cause farmer ruin. It didn't cause economic collapse. It didn't drive up the cost of groceries. It simply gave that information. And there's a lot of talk around, if we label genetically engineered ingredients, it's going to drive up the cost of food. Companies change labels all the time. The month of October is a great example. There are pink ribbons on absolutely everything. And then you also look at the Halloween. Companies are constantly swapping stuff out. And there's jack-o'-lanterns and all kinds of Halloween stuff on these labels. So companies can change labels at any point. Ingredients change all the time. And I think, again, to say, this is a fundamental human right. Our own American companies are already giving to all of our trading partners. A farmer, when he's buying seeds, he can choose, does he want to grow genetically engineered seeds, or does he want to grow non-genetically engineered seeds? A farmer's given that choice, and a mom and a family and a dad and a grandmother and an aunt and an uncle, or somebody battling cancer, or somebody with a son with autism, or somebody that's pregnant, they deserve that same fundamental human right.
Just a choice, absolutely. Real quickly, we actually have a question, which is from, and I'm so sad I can't pull up Comment Tracker. For those of you who watch my show, I love me some Comment Tracker when I can pull it up on the screen. We'll work on that for our next show. Esther's in the audience. I mentioned her earlier. Hey, girl. She says, hi, Robyn and Mia. Can we clear up something for one hot second? There are commercials running in Colorado about the cost of GMO labeling. We're going to get into that. Could you clarify how much labeling costs for small family farms will be? Thank you. I heart you all.
Oh, thanks, Esther. That's a great question. And thankfully, Consumer Reports just came out with a research and report that basically says it would be less than a penny a day. And so, all this high drama, again, it is incredibly dramatic. And I think, unfortunately, especially when we're talking about the farmers, people are only focusing on that cost of that shift. And so they're only looking at the expense to shift a farm, for example, from growing genetically engineered crops that are soaked in chemicals. And yes, that chemical contamination of the soil does need to be addressed. And in order to shift over to organic or non-GMO, that takes a process, because you've got to give time to that soil to detox, basically.
Sure.
But I think what that fails to also highlight are the revenue opportunities in front of a farmer should they shift to non-GMO and organic. And so, the no side is saying, oh my gosh, this is going to drive up costs. Let's step back and let's look at the revenue opportunities for those farmers. And if you look at the fact that organic and non-GMO products are growing at 12% a year, 65% of Americans say that they are looking for organic ingredients at least some point in time. Wells Fargo did a report on Kroger, and they showed that 70% of Kroger shoppers are looking for these products that are free from all this artificial junk.
Right.
So that's where our families are moving. And again, did any of us want to be moving in that direction? not necessarily. I mean, it's usually driven out of a cancer diagnosis or a food allergy diagnosis or an autism diagnosis that suddenly is forcing us to read labels. And when we read those labels, we realize we don't know a lot about what's going into the food that we eat. And so, I think when you look at the business opportunity in front of a farmer that shifts, it's absolutely huge. Here in Colorado, take, for example, Chipotle. Chipotle has committed to not only transparency in labeling their genetically engineered ingredients where they use them, but also trying to shift to non-genetically engineered ingredients every step, every place that they can. And one of the biggest challenges that they're confronted with is that livestock feed, for example, is still primarily genetically engineered here in the United States. And so for them to source non-genetically engineered livestock feed, which means livestock feed that's not been genetically engineered to be soaked in Roundup,
right.
For them to source that, they're going to countries like China and Romania. And again, that is a huge revenue opportunity. That's a huge economic opportunity. That is a huge job opportunity, not only for the state of Colorado, but for farmers around the country. And I think data, which is what labeling provides, it would give farmers a very clear read on what is happening with consumer trends and consumer demand. And once we have that data, then farmers can put in the ground what consumers are buying. And if 65% of Americans are looking for organic or non-genetically engineered foods, if they're looking for foods that are free from all this artificial stuff, American farmers deserve to capitalize on that. They've been feeding our country for 5 generations. We would not be here without them. And, again, looking back on this last 20 years, I mean, maybe the chemical companies introducing this genetically engineered system that's genetically engineered to withstand and use all their chemicals, maybe they truly believed that it was going to solve a lot of these problems. But what we know today is that it has created a resistance to their chemicals. It is requiring more chemicals, and it is requiring even stronger chemicals. So what they had promised in their forward-looking statements, not only to their shareholders, but also to farmers, has proven to have taken them in the exact opposite direction. So again, I think to get stuck on just how much it would cost, you are completely losing sight of the revenue opportunity that could be captured in the shift.
And if you really want to make it about money, which let's face it, I mean, we're all for profit, right? All of us, even the mom, anyone who's taking care of their family, you're running a business, right? That's a business too. The business of running your family, keeping them healthy, and keeping things safe. That you just look at the numbers too, which is what I love about what all the information that you present. Yes, we get that heartstring. It has a lot of drama to it, but we're also presenting facts and numbers. And listen, we're getting the audience fired up. We have a lot of people that are viewing, so everyone, I would love for you to go over to the event if you're watching it on the Google event and comment. I see some people popping in because this is not just about Robyn and I talking. It really is these are 2 voices that are talking that want to fire up all the other voices and get you going too, and we're going to get into that as well, of these practical things that we can do. First of all, we can start tweeting, which I love. Robyn, you mentioned at Just Label It is one of the Twitter handles, and then using hashtag Right to Know, RIGHTTOKNOW. Awesome. I mean, start talking about it. Absolutely.
And we've also, Right to Know Colorado, and I think in particular why Colorado is such an important state in this. It's a huge ag state. We've got corn and potato farmers around the state, and that, with Colorado, we have the opportunity to change the national conversation. And I think that's why we see these chemical companies pouring millions of dollars into this state against this initiative. And again, I cannot think of a single reason why a pregnant mom does not have the right to know that the food that she is eating during her pregnancy has been genetically engineered to withstand Roundup. You walk into Home Depot and you read that label and it says keep out of reach of children. Every parent knows not to store that under their kitchen sink because of the harm that could come. And again, we need to know how our food is being produced. We know the allergen content. We know the protein content, the sugar, the fat. We know if milk is pasteurized. We know if orange juice comes from concentrate. But we haven't been told that our food's been genetically engineered to withstand these chemicals. And I think, again, I'm not going to take a position either way. The science is still out, and because the science is still out, because we don't have those long-term human health studies, all of our trading partners, 64 countries around the world, including places like all of Europe, Japan, Russia, China, India, Brazil, all of our trading partners, they already label these ingredients. And so again, for Colorado, this opens export markets, and we really have the opportunity to change the national conversation. And I think that is exactly why you see these chemical companies pouring millions of dollars against the initiative.
Absolutely. And you know, you hit it. I love the idea that's think globally, act locally, right? So this conversation and the conversations that we're having really can extend outside the Colorado borders. And real quickly, we also have at Yes on 105. We're going to talk about Proposition 105. And then Right to Know Colorado has a great website as our Facebook page and a website as well. We're going to post all those links in here too. And then Robyn, that got you to starting Colorado Moms for Labeling, right?
Well, you know, we were talking about it, and I felt that there were so many moms that I've connected with, and you know, when you go to Children's Hospital or you go to National Jewish and you see those moms, moms know that something has changed.
Yes.
And again, correlation is not causation, but when you learn that other countries have cleaner food products, that our own companies like Kraft and Pepsi formulate their products differently for moms in other countries, that is a fundamental human right that we haven't been given. And I think, you know, really that moms really are the ones, you know, who represent 200 billion in food purchasing. You know, we have this incredible power that we don't realize that we have. And then on top of that, the insight that we have on the front line of this generation of children, which has earned the title of Generation RX because of the rates of all of these conditions. Moms know that. We see it. We live it every single day. And so to offer that place for moms to come together to be part of this movement, I mean, again, I was raised in a really conservative family, and so to engage politically in any way, when anyone first suggested that, I just thought, I'm not that mom. I'm not that mom. But moms are great with other moms, and we can share information, and we can share videos, and we have got some awesome content on Colorado Moms for Labeling up on Facebook. And again, it's just going to continue, and it really is a place to be there for each other, because, you know, I really truly believe that support as we navigate all of the changing landscape of health and everything that we're seeing in the health of the people that we love, to be there for each other as that support is so important to me.
So here's the cool thing about what you're doing. You know, it always feels like these grassroots thing, like a little kumbaya, that just a small voice. But guess what is so awesome about this is the power of social media. We're using the power of Google Hangouts right now to connect you and I, and then a lot of people, and I just want to comment, we have a lot of comments from people that are out of state.
Oh, that's great.
It's really good. We have Cindy Santa Ana. How can others not living in Colorado help with this cause for this specific vote? I'm so angry that we even have to fight this battle. Ridiculous. I
know. I mean, I put that out on Facebook this morning. I said, this is 2014, and I don't think it's a kumbaya thing at all. I think it is an American thing. You know, to me, this is the most patriotic thing that we could be doing. And sometimes when I say, you know, we're fighting for this fundamental right to know if our food's been genetically engineered to withstand all these chemicals. I mean, this is the United States of America. This is a fundamental human freedom to know how your food is being produced. And, you know, again, it is much bigger than all of us. And I think with Colorado in particular, you know, use social media, leverage that. Moms are awesome. There are 680,000 Colorado moms on Facebook. And if you have a friend in Colorado, if you have a friend in another state, if there's something that we're sharing here that you want to use to meet with your school, to meet with your congressman if you're brave enough to do that. I mean, when people first suggested that I meet with my local congressman, I thought, I'm not that mom, I can't do this, you know, but yes, it was on a piece of food allergy legislation. That was the first thing. That was what brought me into this. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be really brave, and I'm going to go in there. And I brought my baby, you know, she had her sippy cup. And, you know, again, once I got in the door, I realized those offices are packed full of 20-something-year-olds and young 30-year-olds, and they already get this. They totally get it. So you've got that team once you're in the office, and they're usually the ones who would love to help you see it through. There's so many things that we can do. You know, we can start movie nights. There's so many great movies like The Future of Food, Food Inc. There's so many movies that you can introduce to start the conversation. There's so many books. that you can read and share and give over to a friend when you're done. There's so many ways that you can engage with your church group. That was a place that I leaned on in the beginning, was my local church. And so there's so many ways to just give yourself permission to start small. And I said this recently in a talk. I mean, I've done a ton of public speaking in the last couple of years. But the very first talk that I ever gave, there were 6 people there. And one was a pediatrician, because I wanted to have a pediatrician on hand who could speak to how it is smart to reduce our children's exposure to a lot of the chemicals that are now found in our environment. And it wasn't just one pediatrician saying that. The President's Cancer Panel, which was formed under the Bush administration and released its report under the Obama administration, so again, not a partisan thing. The President's Cancer Panel is saying it's especially important for children to not be exposed to a lot of these chemicals and pesticides. So, really go where you're the most comfortable. Always, always do it with a friend. It is so much easier to do this with a friend. It can be super scary and intimidating if you have to do it by yourself. Find a friend. Maybe they have a little one that's allergic. Maybe they have a little one with autism. Somebody who really is already trying to make the shift towards cleaner food. Find that friend and figure out a way that the 2 of you can work together in your community. And just don't be afraid to start small.
Well, and I think based on the numbers that we've been throwing out throughout this whole conversation, you have to know that there's probably somebody that's right next to you in your neighborhood on Facebook, on Twitter, that you can simply ask the question, hey guys, is there a restaurant that you like that serves, you could have a party at a restaurant that definitely follows a lot of these trades and practices. You could
And I think, too, to be brave, I mean, when people suggested that we start a garden, I was like, oh, my God, I can't. There's no way, that's not my expertise, I'll leave that to Michael Pollan. But then one day, one of the kids came home with one of the lima beans in a cup, and I thought, okay, that's pretty fundamental, 101. We can all do that. And so I really, just to begin, to let yourself experience the way you would your children. Give yourself that kind of compassion and that kind of permission that you do with your children, to encourage them, encourage yourself, to really step into this change. And one of the funniest stories I have with that was that I spoke in North Carolina to a group of dads, and one of the dads afterwards said, you've totally inspired me, and I'm going to start talking about this. And I kind of kept it to myself. And the first thing he learned when he started talking about it, he said his next door neighbor came out and said, I haven't told you, but I actually have a garden, so here are these 2 dads. And I think, again, this is the 21st century, and it has changed. And sometimes what's hard is that our own parents may not understand what we're seeing and how quickly it's changed. And you will often hear that, oh, well, you guys ate all of this stuff, and you were totally fine. Well, our mac and cheese wasn't genetically engineered to withstand Roundup. It didn't contain those ingredients in it the way mac and cheese can contain those ingredients today. And our mac and cheese didn't contain things like artificial growth hormones that are pumped into cows to help them make more milk. So there is a lot that has changed, and it can be really daunting and really overwhelming. And I've been there as a mother of 4, where I stood in the kitchen and I thought, where do I even start?
What can I feed my kid? What is
pick one thing. Yeah, you pick one thing. You can start with one thing. And if you want to look for non-GMO project verified and opt out of genetically engineered ingredients, start there. A super easy place for moms to start is ditching artificial colors. Thankfully a lot of companies are already sort of moving in that direction. They're not used in kids' products overseas because of the link to hyperactivity, so that's another easy place to start. Another thing that you can do is, if you're brave, if you really are moved to it, you can send a letter to your local newspaper. I was absolutely amazed how receptive our local media was to stories about food allergies and about what was happening to the health of kids. And I think the reason they are is because it is happening around the country. There is not a family that's not impacted now by food allergies or diabetes or cancer. We're all dealing with something, and that sensitivity is what is pulling us together. And that, to me, that is just the force behind the movement.
Listen, and we're going to leave you wanting more. We actually are at half an hour. This went so fast because it is just such a rich and multi-layered topic, which we absolutely love. So for everybody who's out there watching right now, Robyn and I are going to continue this for another 3 weeks leading up to the elections here in Colorado. So if you said yes today, we're going to invite you for the next event. It will be next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and we're going to keep you pumped up with some information on how you can first of all, come back and see us again. We'd love to actually have some people that are Colorado moms come onto the panel, right, Robyn?
Definitely, and we're going to be doing this every Wednesday. Please come back and join us again. We'll get to more questions. If we need to extend it a little bit time-wise so that we can answer more questions, we would love to do that. We're here to work with you guys. It is absolutely an all-hands-on-deck time, and I appreciate everyone who joined us today because it's together that we're going to change the world.
I'm just excited that we have so many people that are here today. This means that the voice is getting out there already, and it's each of us. So thank you so much. Once again, I'm Mia Voss. This is Robyn O'Brien. We will be back next week. We're going to post some more links on here so you can go and follow everything on Facebook and Twitter and get your voice out there. So we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.